Are you looking for a game that you can sell your life, all of your time and your soul to, but you find, wow, a little bit too cliche and uncool nowadays, and you have a burning hatred for Blizzard and Activision, and you just want to see them Thanos snapped out of the universe and have their dust scattered across the far reaches of the earth, never to be seen again? Well, I have the game just for you. Let me introduce you to Monster Hunter World. But V, won't Monster Hunter Rise replace World and completely make it a desolate husk of its former self? Well, you don't know the Monster Hunter community that well then, because there are still people dedicated to the first freaking game. Anyways, with this introduction out of the way, let me get into whether or not this game is going to be worth it for you. Monster Hunter World is the one game in this series that really blew up. In fact, this is Capcom's biggest selling game thus far, but even so, there are people that are still coming to this game fashionably late, as it were. And I can only really think of a few different types of people that would stumble upon this video. It's really people that have just held off or found out about it just now and are wondering whether or not they should get this or just move to the Switch to get Rise. Or it's the veterans that finally decide to try to check it out and see if World is going to offer them the same thing that the older installments does. So this really does kind of make it of where I'm trying to talk to two separate audiences at once. One that might not know anything about Monster Hunter in general, and the other knows quite a bit and only came here to find something that is very specific, and that's it. So sorry if I sound like I'm just talking about stuff you already know, but now having said that, let me start with the development cycle of the Monster Hunter franchise, because I think it would be quite advantageous to at least go over it. Now, the development cycle of the Monster Hunter franchise is pretty simple. They divide themselves up into two teams. One usually works on the mainline game, and the other one usually does some sort of offshoot. Now, surprisingly, the Monster Hunter World seems to be the offshoot, and well, I can't really say for Monster Hunter Rise, but it might be the mainline. They might be dropping the whole idea of the offshoot or the main games, so it remains to be determined. But regardless, I say that Monster Hunter World is a smaller side of the development cycle since, well, it's nowhere near as large as some of the older games in terms of scope of what you can hunt. And I'll address some of that a little bit later on in its proper place. But first, I want to start this review off properly by talking about the graphics. And I'll just come out and say it from the start that this game's visual fidelity is the result of the whole being greater than the sum of its parts. Because if you break down and scrutinize individually all the different aspects, it's not that impressive. But what it does very well is make a cohesive environment that you can get lost in, both literally and metaphorically. Now, I did get this game for both PC and PlayStation 4. I mainly do my gameplay on the PC, where I can get above 60 frames pretty easily. Having said that, I have a 2080 and it'll still eat up a lot of the graphics card's resources, so you might want to go in and kind of tweak it to try to optimize it, because the PC port kind of sucks for optimizations. And I guess that's good enough of a segue to at least go in and kind of talk about the control schemes and how you can customize this game just a little bit, because I want to touch on that. And seeing that we're coming from talking about the visual aspects of this game, let me go over the graphics options. And by going over, I'll be more showing than rather telling. And well, here it is. Now, you do get quite a bit of options on what you can do to optimize your performance as much as you want. But this isn't really the important topic I want to talk about right here. It's more about what you can do with customizing your experience in Monster Hunter World, because you're going to need it. You see, Monster Hunter has always been kind of for controllers. They've never really done anything with keyboard and mouse. And as they moved over with the PC port, it didn't really translate as well. You can kind of fix this wonky control scheme by kind of putting in what you expect, but things such as the grip claw, or whatever it's called, because I don't remember exactly what it's called at the moment, but it controls slightly awkward, definitely compared to if you were to use a controller. Again, this isn't really that important or a landmark feature or anything groundbreaking, but I still thought it was important because, well, having good options is always a bonus. Definitely whenever this game has a lot of weapons that are quite different from each other and will handle much different. Case in point, compared to the long blade, the control schemes and how you would go about the game is completely different than that of someone that picks up the bowgun. This is also my segue into the next major part of this video, which is talking about the gameplay. And starting off with that, I will be talking about all the different weapons that the game gives you to choose from. So there are two really important things about Monster Hunter in general: the weapons and armor, and the monsters that you get the parts to make those weapons and armors from. And well, as for the weapons, there are 14 different archetypes that you can choose from, and they are all very distinct from one another. And to be honest, I really couldn't name off all of the different types from the top of my head, but I usually use the long blade, charge blade, and the dual blades from time to time, whenever it suits my fancy. But all of the weapons are all viable as well as fun once you figure out how to use them. And that's really the trick, because they are very different in terms of button layouts, and why I kind of pointed out the customizations earlier in the video. It will help out in the long run. But to get back on track and onto the weapons as well as the armor at this point, the amount of different weapons that are in each archetype is actually kind of astounding and really does lend to the sense of progression as well as your actual growth in expertise in hunting these monsters. Because it isn't just pick the best possible weapon of that type. Oh no, you need to really think about what you're going up against, because you might want to have one or two different types for elemental, or maybe you need physical. So you constantly have to think, and you're going to build a arsenal of your favorite weapons. But this kind of leads us to the question of, what are we building this arsenal for? What's all this grind for? Well, that's where the monsters in Monster Hunter World comes in, or more or less the other part of the gameplay loop, which, to sum up the whole thing, is, well, you go out, hunt smaller monsters to get parts to build weapons to take on bigger monsters, and you keep repeating this ad nauseum until you get tired, which is a very long time off. No, seriously, these fights with these monsters are so well crafted that I've hunted the same one several times, and I haven't really had the same fight experience because they're that well varied, and the AI is actually keen to pick up on when you're going to try to attack and kind of have their animations done in such a way that counters your attack, so you actually have to think about what you're going to do instead of just blindly flail your weapon against the monster, because most of the time that usually gets you carted right back to the starting place. Okay, sorry, I feel like I'm kind of rambling on right here, so suffice to say, the gameplay is set up in such a way that even if they don't add any new content, you could still play this game for quite a good while, just having fun. And that's actually kind of rare in gaming today, is that games being fun. Yeah, just on that alone, I can recommend this series. But we do also have to talk about the fact that, well, a new game is in development, and we know that will be coming in 2021. So is it worth getting right now, or should you wait and get the newer version just less than a year later? This ultimately comes down to two factors: what platform you want to play this game on, and, well, what are your expectations for your Monster Hunter experience. For the which platform you want to play this on, well, that's pretty straightforward. Just a couple of things to note, and that's whether or not you care about the performance of the game, because, well, the Switch is notorious for having very low performance compared to both the PS4 and most likely PS5, because there's no way they're not going to port it over, or the PC. Are you willing to sacrifice high FPS for portability? So that's really up to you. Now, with the latter is a little bit more tricky because this is where the older fans really have gripes with the game, and that's there isn't as many monsters as in previous editions. And this is also from what I found. I don't think it was ever their intent to be as verbose with Monster Hunter World as, let's say, with, I believe it is the whole Generations. I'm most likely wrong. Again, I'm not really that good with the older generations and which one had which, but Monster Hunter World does have a more limited selection of monsters, but they are very well done. And so those are the main two considerations that you should be weighing when it comes to deciding to get World or wait for Monster Hunter Rise. If this is your first time really experiencing this franchise, then it really does just come down to what platform you want to play this on. This kind of wraps up what I intend to really talk about for whether or not this one entry in this franchise is worth getting right now or waiting, but I could actually keep talking about whether or not it really lived up to expectations for quite a bit longer, which I might actually do that in a separate video if this seems to have interest. But hey, thanks for watching the video all the way through. And remember to like the video if you thought it was helpful, interesting, or entertaining. Also, I am planning a few videos for the different weapons in this game, as well as some starter guides to help out anyone that really wants them. So make sure you subscribe if you're interested in that, or as well as other general reviews and my thoughts on the different games that's come out throughout the years, as well as newer ones. But that's about it, so I won't keep you any longer. Enjoy the rest of your day.